For more on what's happening in Ecuador, let me turn to Tamara Taraciuk Broner. She's the Rule of Law Program Director at the Inter-American Dialogue, a think tank here in Washington, and she joins me from Montevideo in Uruguay. Tamara, what is going on in Ecuador? What is the root of all this violence and gang activity?
These images of violence are a blatant demonstration of the escalating problem of insecurity in Ecuador. We've seen, an enormous increase not only in homicide rates, but also a rapidly deteriorating violence situation, where we see another type of violence with the sort of examples that we're seeing today. You were talking about the assault on the TV station, assault on universities. And this had the purpose of terrorizing the population. Today, kids are not going to school, universities have gone virtual, and the government is facing a very challenging situation in a presidency that is going to last a year and a half. So the president doesn't have much time to address this pressing problem. He announced measures to address insecurity, and the response to his announcement was this escalating violence by the gangs. So
what the disconnect here for many people is just a few years ago, Ecuador was one of the calmest countries in Latin America. What has happened in the last 3 years for us to see and witness this chaos?
It didn't start 3 years ago, but it's escalated a lot very recently. And what we're seeing is first an increase of organized crime, of gangs operating in the country. We are seeing how these gang leaders operate from within the prison system. Over the past couple of years, we've seen prison massacres in Ecuador with more than 400 people being killed inside the prison system. And I think we need to take into account that the consequence of all of that is that people are asking for urgent needs, and they are very willing to accept measures of getting tough on crime that, we've seen elsewhere in the region, how these measures, these pressing requests lead to measures that can severely undermine the rule of law and democracy in the region.
Talk about measures, also this emergency, state of emergency, 60 days imposed by President Noboa. It was imposed after that notorious drug lord escaped from prison in Guayaquil. How much support do these measures have among the general public? Obviously, there's a lot of economic problems in Ecuador. And how much support does the president himself have in Ecuador?
Well, the issue of insecurity is a key concern for Ecuadorians, and the images that we've been seeing over the past few days just make it much more important for the population in general, and they are supporting measures of getting tough on crime. These emergency decrees have to be approved by the Constitutional Court. We'll see how that evolves within the legal framework, but it's a tool to address insecurity. The question is, if the president has declared that this is an internal armed conflict, what sort of norms apply? Are these laws of the war against a terrorist organization? Do they authorize broader permissions for the use of lethal force, for example? And the big question that we have to pay attention to today is, how is this going to evolve? Is this actually going to contain the violence, or is it going to escalate?
Well, that was my next question to you. What is the answer?
Well, I don't have the answer, but I do know that measures that are only focused on getting tough on crime without paying attention to the underlying causes of violence and the absolute need for judicial reform in the country are not going to succeed. You need a package of measures that include, sending to jail people who commit crimes, which obviously needs to happen, with addressing the root causes of violence. And in those, you need to pay attention into the need for judicial reform and the fight against impunity for these crimes, because otherwise you're just giving these gangs a blank check to continue operating in the way they are operating in the country.
Yeah, you make a very, very important point there. Thank you very much, Tamara Taraciuk Broner. We appreciate it.